in that regard, or if we want to talk about equipment. Today is a little bit different because the guy that we have as a guest is mostly seen as an actor. He is to many people known as a Viking. He is also known as a photographer with special skills in people and portrait. Some people know him as an ambassador for nature, but now we might also have to see him as an underwater photographer. His name is Høgh Andersen. He is a fellow Dane, and he's already been involved in many film productions during his, or despite his young age. So obviously it's a good idea to ask him now, why do we have to look at him as an underwater photographer? So let me welcome Alex and see if I can get him up here. And there he is. Hello, Alex.
Hello there. Thank you very much for that introduction. That was pretty good. I appreciate that.
I hope you can hear me. Yeah. You are in the Copenhagen region of Denmark. I am in the other side of the country, and we're doing this one via FaceTime cameras. So obviously there can be a little bit thing with the sound, but we hope it's going to be okay. So Alex, are you tired of being defined as a Viking? Because you played Ivor the Boneless in the Viking series, right?
Yeah. No, I'm not tired of that. It's fine. I'm getting used to it. I mean, there's everywhere I go in the world, people probably know my character's name before they know my real name. So It's okay. I react to Ivor and Alex. So it's okay. It's a thing that happens when you shoot 51 episodes of a TV show, and it's one of the biggest ones in the world. And I'm proud of the stuff. And hey, it will follow me around, but I'm actually absolutely fine with that. It was a great time, and it was 3.5 years in Ireland, and we had a great time with some great people, phenomenal people, really a bunch of workhorses that are extremely talented in what they're doing. And yeah, I was actually shooting a lot of photos on set as well.
Because then let me ask you, do you define yourself as a photographer or an actor mostly?
I don't like to define. I don't like to put myself in boxes or anything like that. It sounds so cliche, but I'm an actor. I'm a photographer too. I try to push photography way more. I want to shoot and be more working more as a photographer for sure. If it was up to me, I would be shooting projects every single time I was not working as an actor. Because that's the thing about acting, and that's also the reason why I was shooting so many photos on set, is because there's so much waiting around time. And bringing your camera to set is a phenomenal way to spend that time in a great and positive way, and in a way that makes sense. I mean, and I show up to work, and we have 200-300 extras all wearing, full costume and hair and makeup and blood in their faces and mud all over. And I'm like, yeah, this is Disneyland for a portrait photographer.
Yeah,
so
no, I totally agree.
Yeah. No,
okay. But listen, you're here today not as a photographer, not as an actor, but as a diver and underwater photographer. And that's because you contacted us because you are also an ambassador for a project called Gate to Nature. Yeah, and there you're working with nature, animals and stuff. What's that all about?
So it has everything to do with me just wanting to do some good, have something that makes sense, work with something that makes sense, and being a known person that has a platform on social media that I can use to do good stuff and to enlighten people about certain topics and issues around the world. I do that. I'm an ambassador for the Red Cross Youth here in Denmark. So that's about helping vulnerable young kids, and that's one thing I do. And then I'm an ambassador for Gate to Nature, which is nature preservation. And hey, it's super ideal for me to be a photographer as well, because then I can go to Bali, for instance, like I did back in March with Gate to Nature, and contact you, get a Icolite underwater housing case and take photos of sea turtles and try to portray and enlighten the issues that Bali is struggling with right now, and try to create some prints and that can be sold, where all the profits will go to nature preservation with the organizations that we're working with down there. So that's basically what it is. It's for me to do something that may have a whole lot of purpose and meaning, and also for me to stimulate my insane wanting to take 1,000 photos and just try new stuff and challenge myself. And my God, underwater photography is challenging. Holy
We're going to get back to that. That's for sure. So, well, yes, you actually contacted me through the Instagram, and we do get a lot of sponsor requests, and I wouldn't say that I was about to erase it. I was about to put it away, and I just checked because your name didn't ring a bell, and I saw you had 2 million followers or something, and I thought, okay, there's something wrong here. This is a weird scam.
This is fake.
It is. It's fake news. I almost erased you. So, but luckily we got in touch, and you explained me about this project. And it's at first I thought it was basically about preserving the turtles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's so much more. So your plan was to go to Bali, and they invited you and the Danish musician Malte. And another photographer called Morten down there to cover this and to create awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to do underwater photography.
Exactly.
Being an underwater photographer, that's quite easy, particularly when you don't have a dive certificate at the time, right?
Yeah, there was minor details that I had to get a diver certificate first.
Yeah.
And that's what I got. So when it was basically a trip to Bali divided into 2. The first trip was working with an organization called Turtle Education and Conservation Center, and it's a guy called Eddie who takes care of the place, and it is basically him keeping all the new unhatched sea turtle eggs safe. And getting them in instead of them getting hatched during the night. And then because of light pollution, which is a massive problem down there, because of all the hotels that are very close to the beach where all the sea turtles are laying their eggs, what happens is the baby turtles get unhatched and then they walk straight to a light bulb instead of the sea.
Yes.
So you can sometimes find under a light bulb like a little track of sea turtles crawling back and forth for hours, not knowing what to do, until a stray dog comes by and eats them. And that's a massive problem. There's all sorts of other problems too with the global warming, and because of the heat, which which decides what kind of sex the sea turtle becomes. There's too many female sea turtles getting hatched right now. That's a problem too. They have so many freaking issues. But what they're doing is literally securing all the unhatched baby sea turtle eggs. And also, if the divers out there or fishermen, whatever, find big sea turtles, adult sea turtles that are damaged, either getting hit by a boat or whatnot, they call Eddie and his conservation center, and they will go out and they will find the sea turtle, bring it in, and treat it. So it's a great organization, and we were working with them.
Maybe we should just tell people that the turtles actually lay their eggs in the sand.
Yeah, they lay their eggs in the sand.
Yeah, and so they're actually being hatched in the sand.
Exactly.
And instead of going to the ocean, they
crawl to the surface, and then to the sea, where usually the stars and the moon are above, so they get very attached to the light. But if there's a massive light bulb right next to them because of some hotel, that creates problems. But yeah, we were working with them for the first half of the trip, and then the other half of it was me getting a diver certificate and working with an organization called Blue Corner Dive, which is located on Nusa Lembongan, which is an island east of Bali, and the main city on Bali. And I got my diver certificate there, and what they're doing is coral restoration.
Yeah,
and they're doing amazing, phenomenal work. And seeing them work on 12 meters down there at the bottom of the sea, and just, hitting like a skeleton of a metal skeleton to put on and attach corals on to restore the basically a desert. It's desert down there, so they need to do that, otherwise it would destroy itself actually. But that's really bad for the entire ecosystem and the animals living within it. So yeah, that was amazing. So it was 2 parts. It was Turtle Conservation Center and a Blue Corner Dive, which was coral reef restoration.
Yeah, excellent. So that's quite a massive project, and that's why you were invited down there, and you needed to create awareness just by being there, being a good-looking guy, and here we are. See this project, but you were also supposed to do some photography on the
sure. Yeah, for sure.
And that's why we look. Listen, what camera do you already use?
So I used to be a Canon ambassador, so I still got the camera and still use that camera from that time, which is a Canon USR. And this was basically my underwater photography kit. That was the 16 to 35 millimeter. It's a Mark II version. The old one, I've had this for years and years and years and years. But this was basically that was it.
Yeah.
And it's not the most sporty camera in the world. It doesn't have the craziest autofocus or shutter speed or whatever, all that stuff. But it's working, and it's a good all-around camera, and it's really great for portrait photography as well, which I'm doing quite a bit. But I'm doing all sorts of stuff, and this is a very, very versatile camera, and I'm really fond of it. The colors are great.
We looked at different options when you ended up getting over here and looking at housings, and we came up with the idea of using the iGlide housing because it's despite, actually, I have one similar here. Let me just show it here. You have yours. I have one here. Yeah, that one doesn't have a port. Yours have a, take out the cover. Yes, there's the dome. And so you see, it looks very simple, but it's actually a very technical, not complicated, but sophisticated camera housing, because it can give you access to all the buttons of your camera, which is quite a job, because when you take one of these cameras, new modern cameras, there are so many buttons, and if the camera is not aligned perfectly in the housing, that button there will work, but this button won't work, and then if you move it slightly, that button wouldn't work, and then blah 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 blah, and eventually you won't get anything out of it. So it's very important that these housings are made and very, very cleverly done, and also that there's a port system that will fit the lens you want to use.
Exactly.
We looked at your lens options, and the 16-35 is also a great lens underwater.
Yeah.
And that's why we found the big dome port. One of the things we talked about was that you were interested in doing split shots, where you stick the camera halfway down in the water, and you part photograph underwater and part photograph above water. This is a special technique.
It's hard. It's really hard. And I came home with zero like that. Yeah.
We had a long chat about how it's done, but I still was thinking, if you come home with just one single good split shot, I would be amazed, because
well, you were right. You were right.
It's a discipline. Listen, for those who don't know, doing underwater photography, I mean, you can be a great photographer on land, and it's all the technical part, ISO, aperture, shutter speed, anything you need to know about it. Maybe you know about these things, but putting it in a housing, going underwater, you have to think about the current, the depth, your equipment, the buoyancy, your buddy, the visibility, and then all the buttons are not in the place where they used to be. They're in a housing further out. So you have this big lump with you. So you need to, it's just so much harder to do pictures underwater. And those who don't believe me, just try it.
Try it and feel sterilized. It's so freaking hard. Yeah. And it really took me by surprise. I knew that I was going to be incredibly restricted because of the fact that, and I'm not a technical guy. I don't shoot with this every single day. So I'm completely warmed up with my fingers and, understanding, okay, bum, 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 bum. And then I just changed my ISO or whatnot. I had to change a few settings actually beforehand to make it easier for me to shoot photos underwater. Because it's harder to change the ISO if you have to press this button down and turn it, and then while trying to shoot a moving target, which could be a sea turtle, and shoot it like this, and finding the autofocus correctly and all that stuff. It's a lot. While on top of that, you're underwater, controlling your buoyancy all the time, trying to breathe normally so you're not bouncing up and down all the time and stuff like that. It is so hard, and then you add that times 10. It's incredibly hard, and it was a super cool challenge, and I'm actually
good. I'm glad you say that, because we don't want to scare people away from, I sell this stuff for a living.
It's so hard. It's so hard. Don't do it.
Run. No, but it was fun, right? It was a fun challenge.
Hilarious. So much fun. And I remember after the first dive I did with the entire thing, and we got underwater. That was at Manta Bay. We'll get to those photos later for sure. But that was at Manta Bay, and it was freaking crazy. There he is. That's it. But it was so hard, and it was the first time I had it down, and the camera, the housing was incredibly buoyant. Yeah. It kept pulling me up, and I should have put, if you can see it on my photo, there's these little holes in the grip here, and you should actually fill that out, as far as I'm concerned, with some weights to level out the buoyancy, because I was shooting like this all the time. It kept pulling me up. So I had to pull down, swim down, shoot, and then pulled up again, and then it was just like this all the time. And it was really hard. And my instructors were like, "Come on, what are you doing? Your buoyancy was great when we were in the swimming pool. What's happening?" And I was like, "It's the fucking camera."
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing I would change for next time, for sure. Obviously, that's what happens when you're a beginner and you don't know anything.
Yeah. Let me just say that when you bring an underwater housing that has buoyancy, which means positive buoyancy, lift you up, you have to add 1 or 2 extra kilos of weight on your weight belt. I hope somebody had told you that, but you can also, normally you would put in a weight, an arm system for external light, and they're made of metal, and they normally weigh the system down. And thirdly, you can actually get a small device to put underneath this housing, screw it onto, and you can put a piece of weight on that. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But the thing about it, I put an extra weight on me, an extra kilo, maybe 2 on me, because I was wearing it. But that doesn't change the fact that when I'm swimming, my weight is on me. It's not on the camera. So the camera still keeps pulling my hands up and my arms up. So I was shooting quite a lot from the hip, and it was sometimes it was freaking horrible. Other times I was lucky enough to get something. But yeah, it was an incredible challenge and so much fun. And every single time it's a challenge, that's when it gets fun. So when you go down there and you're fighting quite a bit to get that real good shot, and you look at the camera afterwards, when we got up in the boat after our dives, we were like, boom, 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 going through it. Did I get something? Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. And that just makes the whole experience so much more profound and just delightful.
That's what we do like as underwater photographers. I mean, we take all these underwater photos, and when we get up, we sort of relive the whole thing, and we walk around and say, "Oh, did you see this one? Oh, wow, where did you see that?" And because it's instant memories on a memory card. So you keep them, and it's a great way of diving because you're aware of so many details. Exactly. So underwater photography is great in that sense. But looking at that picture, it seems like you had it covered pretty well. I mean, that looks awesome. That's a poster picture there, isn't it?
that one there we're looking at right now, yeah, that's me. That's a German guy that we met that had a lot of experience with underwater photography, who asked us politely if he could come with us. And his name is Tim Wolf, and he shot all of that. And I also talked to him quite a bit about the post-production. How do I edit these photos? Which is a very interesting conversation too, because everything is blue. It's incredibly hard to work with. I'm a Lightroom guy. I don't use Photoshop or anything like that. I like to keep it simple. So it was really hard to figure that thing out too. It was, I watched a lot of YouTube videos and had a chat with him about how to deconstruct the photo and remove all the blue colors of the photo. Because when you look at it raw, it's just blue and there's no contrast, there's no nothing. So you kind of have to deconstruct the photo, and then after that add colors into it after. And that was really interesting too. But he was a great help.
Yeah. I hope nobody sits out there thinking that I was a bad teacher just letting you off with this, but I was also trying to restrain myself from giving you too much input on the way, because I mean, just taking a housing underwater on your open water dive, I mean, on your learning, on your course, and having to perform with it. I mean, it just has to be super simple. So I didn't talk to you about white balancing or filters or adding external lights or anything.
No.
I mean, and when you shoot raw, you come up with the picture. The picture's there somewhere in the raw file. You just have to work in Lightroom to get it out. So
that's exactly what it is. And obviously you're shooting raw, so I don't have to think about white balance and all of that stuff. But it was still a challenge to, because that's the thing about it. You see, there's 1,000 photos out there that are freaking phenomenal and are made by you and other great underwater photographers that have tons of experience. And literally my job is to go there and have 3 dives with the camera and get photos that are interesting, good enough. The composition has to be interesting, the light, whatever, all that stuff, the motive in the photo, everything has to be of some kind of quality that's good enough for it to be sold as a print, because was the entire idea of it. It's me coming home with some prints that we could sell through the organization, and by that, with all proceeds going to supporting the local organizations we were working with on Bali. So that was a massive challenge, and it did add a lot of extra pressure on the whole thing.
I know. Yeah. I know. I was, for the listeners and viewers who don't know this, it's just an incredible large task. Yeah. So I didn't perhaps let you know. I didn't want to scare you.
No, and that's good. That's good. That's how it's supposed to be. I mean, the only way you learn is by doing it yourself. So that's what it is. And hey, as I said before, every single time it's a challenge. That's when it gets fun. Unless you go home with 0 and you're like a freaking disappointment. But yeah. I'm pretty satisfied with everything. We'll see some of the photos later. But I'm pretty satisfied with everything and how it went down.
Yeah. So listen, why don't we see some of the images that you actually did do?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. There's one.
Yeah, so that was the very first time. That was on the first part of the trip. That was the very first time I was out in the water with it. And super stressful, and we're releasing these baby sea turtles now. And I was, because we were traveling pretty light, so I hadn't done the whole, I hadn't, as you told me, to be prepared beforehand, but I wasn't able to. But because I had to take photos before that wasn't underwater. So I had to get the camera out of the housing. So I was on that beach in the background of that photo, getting the camera attached to the housing and, deflating it and all that stuff. And oh my God, But then I got out into the water and we released that sea turtle and a lot of sea turtles. But that was me on foot walking with it. And I'm not kidding you, we're like 30 meters out here. It was it was very shallow, so I could follow it for quite some time. But this is just before it gets too deep. And my water was up to my chest at this point. And I kind of wanted to do the split photo here, but it was such a challenge. It's such a small motive that you have to find, and you have to get your autofocus to focus on, while you're also trying to create a great composition. You're trying to find your footing on the bottom of the sea. You have to oh my God, so much stuff was happening, and it was moving constantly. It was so hard. But I got that one in, because half of the time you get it in focus, but there's some reflection of the sun in it, or there's some water in front of it that's covering it quite a bit, and it's just not compositionally beautiful. And this one was, okay, here I got it. I got it straight on. It's interesting to see from the side. I got its face. I got a little dot in its eye as well from the reflection of the sun, and you can see it. You can kind of see it going on adventure. It's but yeah, that was the tough one. And after that, I was like, holy cow, this is going to be hard. But this was, I would say, probably one of the harder photos to take, because we are we are at sea level. And it's so hard. There's so many things, and the autofocus has such a tough time figuring out what to focus on. Where when I'm underwater, it just becomes a different universe, and there's not a lot of things in front of the camera just pushing up against the glass all the time. So because when you go underwater, it's like that. Then it becomes almost like air, and everything it's easier for the camera to focus on something specific.
Actually, what I tell many people who are a little bit scared of going diving, they say, no, I tried to snorkel. It was hard. It was not for me. I don't want to go diving. But I have to, then I explain to people, listen, it's in the surface that is the most tricky, because there's wind, there's sun, there's waves. Once you're underwater, it just
completely settles down, and it's quieter.
Yeah, so I get it. Taking pictures on the surface is hard. And actually, one of the things that we say that is the hardest part about doing underwater photography is the motives move. They don't want to sit still.
Oh my God, that was so hard. I shot 200 photos of it, and I don't know, 5 or 10 was in focus. It was awful.
Yeah.
But I got that one, and it was okay, and we could use that for a little bit of So Me. But here we go. That's underwater. This is at Manta Point. And that is on the second part of my Bali trip, where we were working with Blue Corner diving and conservation, which was coral restoration. And such a great job. They're doing such a great job. I was getting my diver certificate, and this was the first time, because we were going to Manta Bay, and I was like, please let me get the camera down there. And they were like, no, you're not actually allowed to, because you don't have the certificate yet. That was my second last dive. And that was the first dive of the day. And then we went to something called Crystal Bay and did the last exercises, tasks. And then from there on, I was a diver. I had my certificate. But I was being pretty tough on them. I was like, please let me take some photos of those mantis, man. And I got down there, and they finally let me, and I got down there, and it was great. It was amazing. Holy cow, it was an incredible experience. And getting down there with that for the first time, really underwater with the whole kit, and just experiencing how buoyant it was and how much it was pulling me up. And I didn't have an extra kilo on me. I only was around 3-4 kilos, and I should have been 5 at least. And it was a really tough one. It was a really tough time. I used my air like that, because I I was working like this all the time. It was kept pulling me up. So I'm also really satisfied with what I actually ended up coming home with. And we had a great dive. We saw like 15, 20, maybe more than that mantis.
Bastard.
And they are massive, massive.
They're amazing.
You're just down there at 12 meters and you just see the shadow out there. Yeah. And you're looking at it and you're like, what the? And then it just approaches and it gets closer and closer and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then all of a sudden you can kind of see some detail on it. You can actually see what it is. It's not just this black shadow out in nowhere. And it just comes closer to you. And they're very gentle, curious animals. So they went really close to me. And at one point in time, it just drifted right over me. And I was like, and you're having an out-of-body experience while you're also trying to capture the whole thing while controlling your buoyancy. It was crazy. And yeah, this is probably one of my favorite photos that I got. This is a snorkel guy. I don't know him. It was just a random guy diving down, and I'm really fond of the composition. There's a dance to this. It's more like it's almost like it's choreographed with the placement of the manta rays, and that I captured 3 of them in one photo with a guy placed in between them, and some of the sunlight coming in from the top to create some contrast, to create some light, some drama in the photo, along with me being able in post to add some color into it, add some warmth into what would be a very cold photo and very blue photo. And also it gets a little bit of detail in the bottom of the sea there. I've added a little bit of, it's probably hard to see here, but I've added a little bit of warmth, a little bit of red in the bottom, and having that turquoise, natural, almost a little desaturated blue, actually, a dusty kind of blue in the water in the middle of the photo, and then adding some warmth to the highlights, a little gold, a little yellow, a little green in the highlights to add some color contrast. Instead of the highlights just being white, I like to add a little bit of a combination of green and yellow in it, and because it just works great with the tones, and especially with the blue, and also just we have a little bit of skin here, and when you get attached to and look at at his fin, but also his hand and his shin on his leg, and that would just be pale, just be white, and I like to add a little bit of human color into it, especially down there.
Which is rare.
Yeah, it's extremely rare. It was the first time coming up with photos underwater, and I realized, holy cow, there's like 0 colors, and the camera can't find any, and I don't see anything either, because how long is it? You go down to 10 meters and almost all colors are gone. Red is completely gone. It's basically just blue. And I was around that depth at that point in time. I think this is shot on maybe 35 millimeter. What happened when I got down there was that in my housing, there's an attachment to the camera so that you can zoom in and out.
Yeah.
And that came out of its attachment.
Yeah.
The first time I did it. That's the only thing I would say about this is it's a little hard, and I probably did it wrong, or it wasn't completely perfectly attached. Yeah. So when I down there started not focusing, but zooming on my 16 to 35, it came out of its lock. And I was stuck on 35 or 32 or something like that for the entire thing down here. Ooh. So yeah, and that was in the beginning of the dive. So I was just shooting with whatever. Yeah.
It's basically just called a gear, and I think you can see it here on the housing. There's this knob.
Yeah, exactly.
and there's a small gear on the lens. So when you work on this knob here, you can change the focal of the camera. And but hey, you were far away from things, so I think 35mm might have been an okay focal width.
Exactly. Yeah, it worked well. I mean, it doesn't look unnatural here. It's really
you'll get a little more grainy because you compact the water a lot, so there's a lot of water between you and the subject, and you don't see that, but you see it in the black tone, so you need to work with it in Lightroom a little bit more. But it's great. We should see the next one that you also have. Let's try and change here. Yep.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's what you want in water photography. That's what you like, isn't it? When you can get up close to the animal and all the details and all that. Yeah. No, when I got 4 or 5 photos in a row of it just coming towards me like that, and it drifted over me, and that photo right there is just, I think it's freaking cool, because it's not an amazing photo. It's not like there's something crazy happening. It's just a phenomenal motive. It's not a motive, a subject. It's a beautiful subject, and I got it really great with the focus, and the visibility was pretty cool. And again, this photo was completely blue, but I deconstructed it and got some erased all the blue colors from the sand at the bottom of the sea, and that creates that natural white color, which is nice, because otherwise the whole thing would just be blue and it wouldn't have any contrast, or it wouldn't have any natural look to it, actually. And also I get the white of the bottom of the manta ray. I get that white as well. It looks very much like it would if you had it pulled up over surface, or if you were closer to the surface. And what was very interesting on that shoot was it was pretty overcast, actually. So we didn't have a lot of sun. And I really realized that it's bread and butter with that sunlight, especially when you're down there. If it's overcast, there are no sun rays, there's no light, and it's almost impossible to get a good shot. This was sun coming through some small clouds, so it wasn't full on, but it was enough to create a photo that was pretty decent. I think you showed the other photo. If you could go back to that, you can see all the light rays from, especially there's a lot more sun there. And also the one before, I think that one, you can really see all that drama that's coming in from all the sun, that's the sun rays coming through the surface. And that just creates a very interesting photo. And you can see all the bubbles are getting highlighted, and all the fish as well, and the bottom of the bottom of the sea there as well. You see these little light spots, which just creates a lot of drama and playfulness in the photo. And that's really, really important, because otherwise it's going to be incredibly blank. And this one, you can see it straight away. It's way more flat, but it still has a little bit that I could add into it in post-production. And I'm almost like blown out the upper left corner of the photo. I've almost blown that out with the highlights, just to create some kind of fluency in the colors. So going from light blue to dark blue to that manta ray there. It's almost like there's some lines heading into it. It's also heading kind of towards the light at the left corner.
If I can say something, I really like this one for several reasons, because it seems like you're talking it down against the others, but I do like that one.
I like it a lot.
Yeah. I saw you had a print of that one as well. What I like is it has that eternity. I think as a poster, it works really, really well. It has very simple lines, so there's like the line going diagonal through it. And it's like almost duotone, but you have managed to get the whites set so that it's not flat. It actually has a high contrast, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And there's still details in the blacks. So, I mean, in many ways, the exposure and the edit and stuff is all great. but it has that calmness in it that I combine with diving. Many people think that diving is like an action sport. It's not. I mean, it's the opposite. It's a zen sport. You have to get into yourself, look into yourself, and you relax. The heart rhythm has to go down, so your breathing has to be calmer, and you see, and these animals are the essence of light diving and stuff. And
that's a great point.
This here, it has a much larger calmness in it than the others, and that's why I think it has a long-lasting value as a poster.
I agree. It's a great point with the calmness. I mean, I can for sure tell you it wasn't calm shooting that photo. It was stressful as
I know. That's what what's so neat.
But the image tells one story, and I like the simplicity as well, because it also works for printing. Print has to be more simple. It has to have some kind of aesthetic to it, and this is aesthetic. Also, it's very. It has it's very themed. It has an underwater theme to it, because it is a beautiful animal, and you can see it up close, and you can see the details on it, and you can study it, which I also find very interesting with this completely different almost planet and universe that you absorb you into when you go down underwater. It is just completely different. So for me, it's also, when I look at underwater photography, it's about almost through the photo exploring something that we do not see, and there's an adventure to it, and I like that a lot. The only thing is, like, the bottom is nice and all that. It's a little, I think it's a little messy in the background. I think there was a diver up in the right corner that I actually removed, because it created a little it was a little unbalanced, and I wanted all the focus to be on that and create that calmness, so there wasn't too much happening, because I already think it's a little bit too messy with the background. I kind of wanted it to be separated and detached from the bottom of the sea, from that massive coral rock in the background. You kind of want it to be just it in the middle of the ocean. And
I get your idea for it. And removing the diver is a good idea. Graphical scene as an editorial or designing viewpoint. Obviously, as an underwater photographer, we tend to not to manipulate the pictures so that they're not actually there. But I think if you want to make a poster, I think it's nice to clean it up.
Sure. Yeah. For sure.
Listen, time is running, and we have some more pictures and some more stories that needs to be told. So I'm sorry for rushing a little bit.
Oh, no worries.
We'll get into details with this too much.
We could talk. We could talk about this for hours.
Yeah. That's the beauty of
in relation to what I said before about creating or having a subject attached just all by itself in this massive black hole of the ocean. That's what's happening in this photo, which I really like. It has a simplicity to it, and it's also working really well for print, because it is very simple, and it has that aesthetic to it. And there's a few lines of the sea turtle getting mirrored in the surface of the water, and that creates kind of this line going down to the sea turtle. And I like that contrast between the color contrast of this deep, dark blue ocean that just keeps going on for an eternity, and this brown colored, warm sea turtle that's just floating about. I like that a lot. And it works really well. I got the print here, actually. Okay, I got the print. Yeah, there it is. There you go. And there you go. And it just works really well. And photos are meant to be printed, obviously. Yeah. So it's really nice. It works well, and it has a calmness to it too that I really like. Yeah.
No, I agree.
It's not a very new, original, never seen before photo. It's freaking boring in that regard. But that was my second dive. I had 3 dives, and the third dive that we didn't see any animals. Actually, we were just doing coral restoration, and I was portraying that work. So I mean, with everything, when you're thinking about everything and all the limitations that I was working within, I'm pretty satisfied with what was happening, because
I'm satisfied as well, and I'm proud of
my
you.
expectations were low. My expectations were really low, I'm telling you.
Oh, so let's see some of the other. There's a couple of more turtle pictures because they have a lot more color. Let me just blow that one up.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's the dream. That was the dream. You know, going to Bali was like finding that sea turtle, getting that shot of it. And still right now, I don't think I've got that shot of it, because it was really hard. It's a super calm and great animal, and it's super, super beautiful. And it's just the epitome of this whole trip and everything that it was about. You know, it's literally a sea turtle that we're down there to highlight and try to help save, because it's really struggling, and it's floating above a coral reef, which is bread and butter for both of them. It's the ecosystem down there, and they're both extremely challenged due to a lot of reasons, mainly global warming, and it was just so important to get that shot. And I still don't think I really got it, but I'm telling you, it was freaking amazing to be down there a couple of inches above the bottom of the sea and the coral reef, and just being completely in line with the sea turtle, and try to follow it and try to get that shot that you really want to. And I mean, I would have loved to have been more in front of it, but I never really got that. It kind of scooped away as I was approaching it, and you just completely panic. You're like, and composition, get closer. I can't. It's moving away. All that stuff, and at this point in time, it was on the second dive, and it was at the end of the dive. So I was around 50 on my whatever
bars in the tank.
Bars. Yeah, I was on 50 bars. So I was going up there.
Yeah.
So but I was like, I need to get this.
Yeah.
And you see here again, this photo would have been incredibly flat and boring if it wasn't for some of the rays, the sun rays coming in, and just creating a little bit of drama here. But again, it's not a completely perfect original photo, never seen before. That's not what it is. But it's for my second dive, I'm like, hey, I freaking got a photo of a sea turtle that's pretty decent. I mean, when you get down there, you're just happy it's in focus.
Yeah, and you know, I could tell a lot about how to approach these animals, and how you are not supposed to, or you shouldn't hunt them, because you're never going to get in front of them. And the thing is to find them sitting and eating, and then let them sort of just naturally move past you. But I mean, you don't have the time for it. And I know I've spent entire dives just on a single animal, wanting it to go in my direction, and it's just
exactly.
So when you sometimes see these fantastic, perfectly compositioned pictures, and you think it's so easy, it's not. It's a living animal you're trying to get into composition, into you know, your picture frame, and it's so hard. It's so incredibly hard. Let's just see this picture here. It's
that's me trying to hunt it. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. So that's taken from the surface down at you, lying there.
Yeah, that's
which brings things a little bit into perspective. That you see.
It's funny because on this photo it looks like the sea turtle is a miniature, but it was not. It was the size of my upper body. It was a big one. But that's because of the distortion from the camera and from the glass, and you can also see the incredibly distorted kind of very circular shape that the photo has, and Yeah, that's because he's probably on a 16 millimeter, maybe less actually. Yeah. And he's not that far away. I think he's meter and a half, maybe 2 meters. So for that, it's gonna look weird. But that's me chasing something that I shouldn't be chasing. But I that was it was now or never at that point in time.
These turtles, some of them become 100 years, so they are quite, they're quite tough. They can take a bit of a chasing, and I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of snorkelers in the area every day who likes to go try and snorkel down and see them, and they just leave if they don't like it, and they just go away. They don't bother too much, but obviously if you want to get close with the camera, they will tend to move away. But it's just funny seeing the picture of you and the turtle in the same shot.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it's about approaching them slow, and I actually got a photo of me approaching the sea turtle. I think it's the same one actually, while it was eating, and I got photos of that, and they were all great and all that, but it was just a photo that I had seen so many times before, so it was not print worthy. And I got an edit of it, but it's just one of those where you're like, yeah, but it's more like a snapshot. It doesn't have a interesting composition to it. It doesn't have like a cool play with the colors or the light or, I'm portraying a sea turtle eating, but there's photos out there that are
there's always one picture that is better than the other when you have more pictures.
For sure.
So let's move on to the corals. I mean, that was a different thing.
Yeah, this is what they're doing. Yeah. So it's basically a desert down there. This is New Zealand, and what they're doing is they have this skeleton of metal skeleton that they are hammering into the bottom of the sea, and you can see it right below me there. So that was an entire farm of these skeletons where they attached the coral reef onto, so they can live and they can flourish. And it was amazing. You can see it in this photo here that I'm portraying, like lines of it's an entire coral reef farm down there. It was amazing to see. And when we got down to the first time I got down there the first time without the camera, the current was crazy. Our instructors came up afterwards and was like, "Oh, that's quite a current for a first time." We were getting down there and we were just floating by, watching everything just float by us. And it was amazing, but it was us floating. It was quite an experience and really tough to work with because I had to portray them, restoring the coral and attaching the coral on the skeleton. But the current was so strong that all of us was holding on to the skeleton to stay close to it and not be drifting away. Yeah. And that was really tough, really tough. We spent
if you have a big housing in your hands as well.
Exactly. And trying to get photos of that. If you go back a little and I can tell you in photos, the one where I'm underneath the skeleton there, that's me. And I'm trying to portray, because I thought that this was interesting. I could create like a very deep photo with a lot of foreground, middle ground, and background. If I got down there and down to the bottom and got a shot of somebody through the grit of the skeleton and trying to get the focus on these very focused eyes, very focused eyes and serious eyes on working, concentrated eyes on working, trying to restore the coral reef like that. Exactly. So you have a foreground there and the eyes, and then just the background and everything that's happening there. And that was a lot of fun. Really tough, but very, very crazy. And also all of the dust that it came from the bottom of the sea and all that stuff getting wheeled up into the water, and the visibility wasn't phenomenal, and it was overcast as well. So it was just tough conditions, but it was so much fun.
I can imagine. This is is the last image of this series of stuff that you sent me. So and the hour is going fast. We're almost
we can
there.
talk about this for hours and hours and hours and hours.
Absolutely. Some other time we'll have to do it. But listen, let me try and sum up here. So let's just conclude taking a large underwater camera housing with you on your dive course might not have been the best idea, but that was the option you had. Okay.
That was the way it had to go.
And I tried to coach you as much as I could on the way down there before. So
you did great, Lars. You did great, Lars.
I hope that helped a little bit as well. But I mean, people might still think this is too much for them if they are divers and they want to do things. So, I mean, we sell a lot of these, and these are camera cases. They're for iPhones. So, and you can basically do that. And the quality of the iPhone today is just also phenomenal. I mean, amazing stuff. I have literally done seriously good pictures that I have on my phone that I show people and say, wow. And when I tell them that the pictures never left my phone, they were taken with this phone and just edited in the phone and shown to them on the phone. They never left the phone. They're astonished about it. So, I mean, so what do you take on that? Should I have given you one of these instead? What do you think you gain from bringing a large camera housing like that?
The thing is, that's the art of it. That's the big struggle and the shallow depth of field that you can get and all that. Because I know the cameras are freaking great, and now the iPhones have that portrait mode, but it looks horrible. It looks fake. It looks digitalized, and that's what it is. But it's great for everyday things. And Melody, who was on the trip as well, he did underwater videos, just pulling his phone underwater because it was waterproof. And I was like, what? I bought this GoPro camera for I don't know how much money, and this is easier, and it comes up with kind of the same result. It's like, come on, are you shitting me? Pardon my French, but for sure that it would work really well with a phone for sure. If you could, because it's also the thing about that is you don't have to work around with a massive camera like this.
No, and you can just put a string in it, and you can hang it here.
And it's a massive factor for sure. Is the mobility element. Because if you're walking around with this, it's so easy. It's way easier to handle yourself down there and get closer to your subjects and all that. And for sure, I would love to bring that with me next time, because that's going to be interesting. I think you could come up with some really cool stuff for sure.
I'll send you one for sure. You can bring it on the next one. But it is fun, and people are often very scared of bringing their phones with them underwater. So I just want to mention that this one has a vacuum valve, so you can actually make a vacuum in it before you dive, meaning all the O-rings have been pressurized already. So the camera actually thinks it's already underwater, so you can see if it's leaking before you dive. And secondly, most phones are already waterproof, so even if it does leak, you don't ruin your phone because it's waterproof. So for that sense, it's not a big. I mean, some people are really scared about bringing it underwater, but it's not a problem. We sell so many of these, so it's a great toy, but it's actually more than a toy. And I think it's going to take over a lot of the compact market with the smaller cameras, because there's no point in. I mean, I think there's a point with bringing a camera like yours, because you can work with the ISO, aperture, and shutter speed, and that's very important, particularly if you have external light. But I mean, if you just want to have a fun camera to do stuff and do some composition, I think it's great.
Oh, for sure. I think that's and also it's such a small niche, bringing that massive house down there, and the photos that you're getting, it's so specific. But for people that wants to get great photos, but are not photographers and don't need to print it out in big size or anything like that, that would be a great option.
No, they want to show the world their pictures on Facebook and on their phones.
Exactly. So it's only me. It's not like they need to create. This is even a small print.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could blow mine up to A2, A1, and this would still be great and sharp, because I got 30 megapixels, right? I mean,
I have to squeeze in a couple of last questions before the hour has gone by. So, will we see you underwater taking pictures again in the future? Are you now also an underwater photographer?
I wouldn't call myself an underwater photographer because I think there are levels to that. But for sure, I'm going underwater again. I'm dreaming about diving again and bringing my camera down there for sure. It was so much fun. And every single time we got up after a dive and arrived at the surface, we were all like, oh, that was amazing. That was crazy. That was, oh, did you see when I did this with it? It's so amazing. And sharing that with somebody else is also extremely important. I mean, if you are into underwater photography, you should bring a friend who is also into underwater photography, because it will add, it's like a 2 + 2 = 5 effect. It just adds so much more fun into it, and sharing it with somebody, that's what it's all about. And and also it's so incredibly tough and hard to get great shots that you want to keep going at it. You want to keep challenge yourself. You want to keep searching for that great photo. And so you can never get really satisfied. And that's probably one of the things that I like the most about this type of photography is I can get tired of portraits because I know sometimes it gets a little trivial or it's the same and yada, yada, yada. It's so hard to get a great shot with underwater photography. So that's the thing that motivates me to keep going. And I think I could do this for a long time.
I can promise you, once you master your housing there, I have a new port or a new lens, or I have a macro setup, or I might have to add some lights or a new kind of housing. I have lots of other toys for you, so you will never be finished.
That's great. That's great.
Like the never-ending story. So obviously,
yeah, it's never-ending playground, right? Yeah. That's the reason why we need to take such good care of the planet, because we don't have that playground if we're not taking care of it. So no, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure being on here, and thank you for helping me out. I wouldn't have gotten this without you. So thank you so much, Lars.
Listen, as regards to those posters, should we just say that we will post some links once they're ready for sale?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. I'm right now in the printing process. I'm looking at prints, and there's one left that's not fully done, but yeah, it's they're coming up on Gate to Nature's website, and you can buy the prints there and support a great organization and great cost down in Bali, and and all the proceeds go to that. No
turtles and handling them.
Exactly.
Excellent. That's great, Alex. Listen, thank you so much for doing this. I really enjoyed it, and you've been a support. And yes, I do agree that we can talk for so many more hours about underwater photography. That'll have to be some other time. Next time you maybe have been to Australia or wherever, and I'll find you again. And but thanks for doing this, and I hope people really got inspired. So we'll see some other time.
Yeah, we will. My pleasure, Lars. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed this interview with Alex. I certainly did. And as you are aware, underwater photography is not just something you do. It is actually something you do. You can do it just for fun with a small housing, or you can even get a high performing system and try to challenge yourself with that while being underwater. But the iPhone housings you can actually use while snorkeling and get great results with that as well. So you should definitely not cheat yourself for that experience if you are anywhere near the water in the near future. So I hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to go and sign up to the photography.eu Facebook group if you want to see more interviews like this one. And hopefully I'll see you somewhere out there, underwater preferably. Take care.